Hello. Thanks very much for coming. I'm sucking on a fisherman's friend because I'm very worried about my throat. I'm fine. It just goes a wee bit croaky. My name is Douglas, but you can call me Doug. If you're Scottish, you can call me Dougie, but only if you're Scottish. You might have seen me here before. I talk a lot about movies, in front of movies. I've been on podcasts and stuff talking about movies and the technical history of films, but I've never done one of these. I've never had a lectern. I'm not an academic. I've never been to university. I've learned everything on the job, so it feels a bit weird being behind the lectern lecturing. So this isn't a lecture, and I've never done a presentation with what is this, keynote. So let's hope it all goes well. We'll all stick together with this. So I work here at the BFI. I am the content remastering lead, which isn't a cable. It means I'm a manager. That's the new modern way of saying you're a manager of people. I manage a small team, two other guys who are here as well, Peter and Roger. And our job is to basically service and look after the BFI's collection of content, a horrible kind of dirty word, content, films, footage, which it owns and controls the rights to. Basically, it makes money for them. Right, I'm going to attempt to go to my first slide. All right. So the BFI, we were trying to work out earlier on, has been distributing films for possibly 50 years, a long time. The BFI is also the biggest distributor of repertory cinema in the UK. So there's a lot of content there. As you can see on the slide, what I created earlier on, 28,000 items in the library. So that covers, because of the age of the BFI as well, it's been going since the 30s, it covers almost every medium. So you've got film, video, audio, so videotapes, film gauges, digital files, DCP, technically still a digital collection of digital files. We also have a bookings team who take care of cinema bookings for the theatrical distribution. And as you can see on my slide, they book out 2,000 bookings in a year to an average of 550 UK cinemas. So can you imagine the amount of content that is? Imagine back in the day. So we've been distributing DCP for about 15 years, digital cinema for about 15 years. Before that, we were distributing film prints. Can you imagine having 3 film prints of North by Northwest and sending them to 550 venues across the UK? So there was a time when vans, and there's a massive varying age here in the room, but there would have been vans. It had just been a normal thing for vans to be going all over the country, sending film cans and film prints everywhere. And we've all seen knackered film prints, that have been run many, many times, because every time you run a film print, in essence, you're damaging it in some kind of way, but not with digital. So where was I? Video publishing. John here runs the video publishing department. It's his birthday today. Sorry, John. And he chose to be here. The video department releases around 30 video releases a year across DVD, Blu-ray, and 4K UHD disc, packed with bonus features. Most of the work that we do in my department services that department, actually. But a lot of the titles that are released on home video are also re-released in UK cinemas or have 1 or 2 screenings in UK cinemas. And I haven't actually listed it there, and it's not deliberately. We also have the BFI player. Everything tends to end up in the BFI player. So for one film, you've got about 4 or 5 outcomes, because we also have a department that, for the films that we have the rights to, they do film sales. So they'll sell the rights to a film being shown on television, or the footage being used in a documentary, or sometimes for a film to be shown at a festival on another side of the globe. So we have to facilitate all these different outcomes. And that's just for one film. So if you think about all the numbers there, 30 video releases, that's 30 films. Then on top of that, we'll have theatrical films. So, you're talking maybe 50 films a year, 60 films a year, something like that. It's a lot of content. Anyway, what is the technical life of a film? It's a question you've all been asking yourselves. Well, the technical life of a film is duplication. Because a film's existence, unlike a work of art, which we will come to later on, exists through duplication. To get a film to a cinema, you copy it. Be it a film print, you'll have a new print made from a duplicated negative. Dupneg, make a new print, send the print to the cinema, and then it'll go to another cinema, another cinema, another cinema. A DCP, digital cinema package, which is what you'll see in all your multiplexes these days. Your views and your picture houses will show DCPs. It's just a hard drive or a collection of it's copied and it's sent out. Duplication, duplication. From the moment a film is made, it's duplicated. The original negative comes out of the camera. They duplicate it so you can see the dailies. They then duplicate it so it can be cut. It's all duplication. Whereas when an artist paints a painting, he just puts it on the wall. Easy, isn't it? The next most important thing is preservation. So you can duplicate a film, be it digitally or photochemically, but you have to look after the film, which is where the BFI's National Film Archive comes into play. Do you all know about the National Film Archive? I thought you would. It's one of the world's biggest collections of moving images. I'm not really going to talk about it here because it's not my area. I did work up there a long time ago, but we liaise with them a lot. We use a lot of the materials held at the National Film Archive. You'll see some pictures in a moment from the National Film Archive, but their job is really important because they look after it. They look after it so we can duplicate it and we can send it to cinemas. So without preservation, you can't see the film. But then there's also a theory that you can't see the film if it's not being duplicated. So do you keep a film locked behind closed doors or do you show it? So that's a big conundrum that keeps me awake at night. And there's duplication. So preservation, duplication, preservation, duplication. That's not a mistake. That's a genuine theory of mine. There's a stack of French videotapes, just clip art. It's not my house. So this is just a summary of some of the formats that my little department of three of us have to deal with. Not on a daily basis, thankfully, but on quite a regular basis. You've got VHS, 1-inch tape, 2-inch tape, BTSP, da-da-da-da-da-da. I'm sure there's some people in this room that have worked with U-matic before. Is anybody? It's a horrible format, isn't it? So even Laserdisc, we've used Laserdisc in recent memory because the video department will be releasing a film on Blu-ray or UHD or DVD, and there might be a legacy Laserdisc with a commentary on it. And the only time it's ever been released with that commentary will be on the Laserdisc. So we have to run. We've got a Laserdisc player. We've even got a Laserdisc collection. I'll show it to you sometime. But we can take the audio off of the Laserdisc. Sometimes the audio on the Laserdisc release might actually be better than the newest version of the film. So we'll take that audio and try and fit it and see how it compares to the most recent version of the audio. It's always a really good reference. In a way, it's something I'll talk about again later. One of the most important things doing this job, remastering films, is research. So if the film has come out on Laserdisc, or if it's been released on 35mm in 1964, or it's had a DVD, or anyway, Super 8, we've used Super 8, it's always good to find out about it and try and get a copy of it to see how it was done, what it sounds like, what it looks like. Because if you don't have a reference, which quite often you don't, you need to do your research. And a lot of the time people don't, and it shows. This is film. This is a small sample of the gauges of film that have existed over the years. This is not, as you probably tell already, not a deep dive. You could probably do a whole lecture on each of these slides and expand on them continuously. So you've got 8mm, 9.5, 16, 35, and 70mm. I think we've remastered from all of those gauges for different reasons, for different films. Sometimes for films you probably wouldn't even realise that we'd gone back to one of those gauges for. You might presume, oh, it was shot in 16mm, and actually we used a 70mm print, you know. Within those gauges, you get all the shapes and sizes. Super 8, Super 16, Super 35, CinemaScope, VistaVision, Technoscope, Cinerama, Standard 8, Regular 8, Double 8. It goes on forever and ever and ever and ever. And obviously, we're not going to list them all today. But within those, the emulsions, oh boy. You've got original negative, fine grains, duplicating positives, interpositives, it goes on and on and on. All these types of emulsion here, apart from the original negative and the print at the bottom. The original negative's at the start. That's what's in the camera. And the print is what you see projected here. Everything in between is used to get to the print. It's duplication. It's a form of duplication, and they all have their advantages and disadvantages to retain the quality of the original negative, but also to manipulate the image in certain ways as to disguise maybe certain elements technically of the film's production. I remember when Superman came out, or one, not the first Superman, one of the Superman sequels came out on DVD or VHS a long time ago. He was flying, and you could see his wires. And that's because they'd gone back to the original negative, scanned it and gone, great, look, the clarity is incredible. But what they didn't factor into the process was duplication. I'm using that word a lot. Because through the duplication and through the post-production process, the loss of resolution and the introduction of film grain disguised the film's wires. Or even through the grading of the colour and the blowing out of the highlights in the sky would blow out the wires. So they hadn't done the research to realise actually there was a thought process to the way the film was produced. So these things are really important. Sometimes it's great to get hold of an original negative, but you really got to know what you're doing, because it's like having a Lamborghini with no instruction book. You'll drive it off the road, I think. Audio. Wow. So this is just a tiny flavour of the many, many, many film audio formats: optical mono, optical stereo, magnetic 6-track stereo, Dolby A, Dolby SR, DTS, SDDS. They all sound great. I mean, I absolutely love a great optical mono track. We showed Jaws here last year. What year is it? 2 years ago. And it was the original optical mono track on a 35mm print. And it was a revelatory experience. The image was fantastic, but the great thing about it was the audio. And a friend of mine said, he's a sound guy in films, and he said, what was great about that was we've all seen Jaws. We've seen it DCPs, 4K, looking amazing, Jaws, Jaws, Jaws. We've all seen it a million times with our surround sound, our laser discs, whatever. But he said it's actually really rare to see it on the big screen with one-channel audio. And what happens is your brain subconsciously isn't going, there's a car over there, the shark's behind me. You're actually looking at the direction, what Steven Spielberg's done. You're not being directed by the audio. So there's a lot to be said about mono, and also a beautiful mono track. It's just a different thing. We're going to get a bit dry now. Sorry if it's not, is it dry enough? So this is just a selection of, how do you even describe these? Digital file formats, video and audio files. Really dull. But they've all got a really important function. AS11, that's the broadcast delivery format for the major broadcasters in the UK. They get pretty sniffy if you don't deliver in AS11. Very annoying. H.265, H.264, that's just a standard compressed format. We use those for creating screening copies for contributors and journalists and all sorts of things. ProRes at the top comes in lots of different flavors. You can get a ProRes 4444 or 422 HQ. It can come in 4K, 2K. The delivery format of most of our masters for home video is ProRes. DNX HD, WAV audio, MP3, AF. Anyway, that's pretty boring. But where does it all come from? I'm sure you're all asking yourselves. Where does it all come from? Well, I could tell you. Most of the time, it comes from the people that owns the films. So most of the time, I'll be having a conversation with John, whose birthday it is today, and he'll say, I'm in a conversation with MK2 or Warner Brothers or whoever it is about this group of films, this selection of films, or this one film, or it could be I'm talking to this director or this producer. They own the rights to the film. So he'll negotiate with them a term for whatever it is we want to do with the film. And then after that, that's where I come into the conversation and say, well, what have you got? And quite often they go, nothing. And we go, oh, no. So that's when I have to sort of have a look around and think, well, where's the best film materials? Sometimes, and we'll get to this in a second, there are actually no materials. So you really have to make good out of nothing. Archives are the richest thing, especially the National Film Archive, because most of the stuff is in there. So that's really useful. Labs and storage, a great, great untapped resource, because most of the time they don't know what they've got. So you have to email people and they say, oh, I haven't heard of that one. And then they'll come back a week later and go, we've got this one. You go, well, that's not that film. Then you email again and they say, oh, we found it. And then it will have maybe disappeared in their vault because the rights holder at the time, their rights had expired. So the ownership and the paper trail had gone dead. There's lots of things like that. Paperwork, old scans of bits of paper saying, email John, and then John's, maybe not alive. And you're like, God, then you have to work out, how do I get hold of this bit of film? I know where it is, but I can't get at it because we don't know who owns it. That's when it gets very complicated. But we always find a way. Then there's one last place. It's my favorite place. There have been a lot of projects over the last 5-6 years that have started with somebody, even myself, finding a bit of film, not on top of the fridge, that's just a joke, possibly under the bed, on eBay, in somebody's attic, in somebody's loft, or just chatting with somebody over a cup of tea, and they go, have you heard of this film? And I'll go, no. And they say, well, I've got a 70mm print. And you go, oh. And then 6 months later, it's being re-released across the UK. That happens more often than you think. Anyway. Yeah. So that's one of the vaults. That's the most picturesque vault of the National Film Archive. It's pretty impressive. And that's just one aisle. Yeah. So bringing analog into the digital world, how do we do it? Well, you have to start with the film. So I'm starting here because a lot of the material that we access is held by the National Film Archive, because, as I said, it's one of the biggest collections in the world. So the chances are they've quite often got something. When we do go to access the materials, they're always checked. That's my colleague Kelly. She's examining the film, giving it a manual inspection, where she'll repair manually any defects to the physical object of the film. She'll also compare multiple copies, multiple prints from different eras, or from different territories, because films were recut for different territories. You find that quite often. You get international cut, domestic cut, adult version, all that sort of stuff. So they compare the different materials, the different elements, and sometimes maybe a film doesn't exist in its complete form. So that's a form of the restoration process, is actually physically compiling a complete version of the film. Once that's been done, can anybody tell me what this is? John? Happy birthday, John. No. Anybody? No. Mark? It's a film cleaner. Mark got that right because it's his. This is a film cleaning machine. As you can see, it's not a very good quality, this picture, because I took it. In the middle there, you've got soft rollers which clean the machine. It's bespoke. Is it bespoke, Mark? It's made specifically for you. No, yeah, you can buy them. Ask afterwards. Ask. So the film goes to get ultrasonically cleaned on one of these machines, and then it goes to get scanned. Now, this is from a scanning brochure, and I've always thought this was brilliant, because I'll tell you now, this is not what it's like. There's everything wrong with this photograph here, and I don't even know where to start. There's the clothes, there's the stairs, there's the lighting, there's a scanner. I like the chair, that's it. This is what a scanner really looks like. There you go. Very unexciting, but that's a really good scanner. That's the RAXT, which is a very typical high-end scanner. It can do wet-gate scanning. Wet-gate is great when you've got films that have scratches on them. Inside the scanner, there's a bath of fluid, and it submerses the film into the fluid, and it fills in the scratches. So I always think of it as a school ruler. If you get a school ruler and you get your protractor and you scratch it, and then you pour water on it, that scratch disappears. That's the same as wet-gate scanning. That's a really basic description. Uh, there's my colleague Ben taking a screwdriver to the scanner, probably fixing it, I hope, or really angry. I think he's here just posing for a photograph. You'd never hold the screwdriver at that angle. No. This here is the original negative to Gregory's Girl, one of Scotland's greatest films. Who here saw Gregory's Girl when it was re-released a few years ago? 1, 2. Oh, actually, no, a few people. That's great. Brilliant. If you didn't see it, the shop outside is selling it on UHD and Blu-ray. So this is the original negative, which came from... Oh, crikey, where did that come from again? I've forgotten now. It came from a storage facility. The rights holder, the rights are now controlled by the BFI, but it was with a storage facility, and we licensed it to release it theatrically or on Blu-ray, DVD, UHD. So it went to get scanned, and not the scanner with the lady in the picture, but the other scanner. And here it is. This is it being graded by Dan at Restore Studios. This is a very typical grading setup. I don't know. I'm pretty sure there's people here that are aware of film grading. This is a very typical grading setup. It was actually quite a challenging grade. There hadn't been much picture fade, but there was chemical staining and things like that in the film element. So it did actually surprisingly have to have a lot of work done to it. Excuse me. This is, so you can see on the right there, you've got Dan's control station monitor with, this is kind of what he's looking at. That's Gregory from Gregory's Girl. But what you've got down on the bottom, you've got a waveform monitor and you've got a vector scope. This is as dry as it's going to get. So the vector scope measures color and the waveform monitor measures luminance. So he can adjust all that to make the film look, well, it's the original negative. So technically he could probably make it look whatever way he wanted. He could make it look very cold, very warm, very green, autumnal, summery. This is the creative process. This is where we have to be really careful. It's the very important bit, actually. I think, actually, if I hit here, this animates. It might not. Did it? Did it move? Probably a little bit. It wasn't very good, sorry. So grading is a very, very important part of the process because it's a creative decision. And in a way, we don't really have a right to make a creative decision on a film like this. I'll come back to that. But it's really important. Image repair. So the film now exists in the digital world. It might have gone through a wet-gate scanner to help with surface physical defects, but it then goes through a process of digital cleanup using very high-end tools and rooms full of young people who are very eager to get into the business, who go through every single frame before and after and correct and manipulate. There's automated versions of repair that do work very well, but you really have to go in manually and do it manually before, after. My background, well, not my background, I studied a long time ago animation, and actually there's a very similar discipline and temperament between an animator and somebody that goes frame at a time through a film and removes defects. I'm going to show you, and I'm really not a fan. I go to film festivals and things, and they say, we're going to have a panel about the restoration of a film, and the director's going to be there, and the people that did it are going to be there, and we're going to show you the before and the after. And I always just get very bored by before and afters. But here's the before and after. So there's no audio, but this is a film called They Came to a City from 1944. Has anybody seen They Came to a City? One person, two people. Oh, Peter, you worked on it. So this is a pretty basic before and after. It's a wee bit low resolution as well. I apologise, but you can see there was a big tear there that's been repaired digitally. It had been patched up physically. There's been stabilisation as well. It's a really good film. And there's also a bit of a grade as well. But they haven't done so much to remove the filmic quality of the film. It still has a slight bit of weave. It's still got grain. It's still got a slight bit of density fluctuation. It still looks like a film. I mean, quite often you'll go and watch a film, an older film being re-released in the cinema, or on TV, and you go, that doesn't look like a film. What have they done? So it's really important to actually do it in a way, do as little as possible. It's a shame there's no audio, but you can sort of talk through the... There you go. That was a lot of work. Available in the shop. So, SD, HD, 2K, 4K, SDR, HDR. Excitement. So, standard definition, high definition, 2K, 4K, standard dynamic range, high dynamic range. If you're into movies, if you're into Blu-rays and UHD discs, you'll have seen these before. So standard definition is 720, 576. It's DVDs. High definition, 1920, 1080. It's Blu-rays and high definition TV, but Blu-rays. 2K is not a home video format or generally a distribution format at all. Sorry, that's not true. You get 2K DCPs. Most DCPs are actually 2K. Even modern films, a lot of the time, the DCPs are 2K. Not many people know that. But home video and home entertainment, you don't really see 2K. 4K, though, is the big one. They love putting it on posters. I know people will go, it's 4K. These are resolutions, so they refer to the size of the frame. SD, HD, 2K, 4K, that's accurate. Standard definition and high dynamic range. So high dynamic range, these refer to the if HD, 2K, 4K and SD refer to the size of the frame, SDR and HDR refer to the depth of the frame. How much brightness and darkness you can find in that frame, and how much nuance in the color you can find in that frame. You can still have, and quite often do, 4K standard dynamic range, and it looks fantastic. And you have 4K HDR on UHD discs. You might have heard of Dolby Vision, HDR10, HDR10 Plus. The whole point is a film can still look really good on Blu-ray and in HDR and in SDR. It's about serving the film rather than serving the resolution. I love making that point because people get so wound up by 4K and HDR. It is fantastic, but ultimately it goes back to what I was saying about grading. It's a very dangerous area because you're taking a creative choice, and if you're not with the right people, you've got to do your research because you're the gatekeeper of that creativity that's happened possibly 100 years ago. So if a film was made in 1922, who are you to say what it should look like? Well, you should be an authority, so you have to do your research and find out and speak to the right people and try and find original elements, original prints, and then you can view the film, hopefully, and see in some way what it would have originally looked like. And then that informs your decision, whether it be an SD, HDR, 2K, 4K, HD, SD, whatever that. I've run out of SDR, HD, 2K, 4K, SDR, and HDR. There we go. This is an advert for a video label run by John. It's his birthday today. This is just a small sample of some of the titles the BFI has remastered from film and brought out on Blu-ray or in some cases UHD. Almost every one of these releases has got some kind of story, a technical story behind it about how we achieved it. The Appointment's a really interesting one because it was a film made in 1981, 82, and it's missing. It technically was missing. We had people, not just myself, but friends of mine and other distributors, lots of people, lots of nerds, looking for this film for years and years. And these are, we usually, amongst us, can find anything, and this did not turn up. And then one day, an old 1-inch broadcast tape turned up at Sony Pictures in Hollywood, of all places, because the film had been distributed over there as a TV movie of the week, and it had just been thankfully kept and preserved in their television archive and they'd forgotten about it. And they said to me, "We've got this film." More often than not, I'd say, "Have you got the appointment?" And they go, "Yes, we've got this amazing element." I go, "Great," and it would be the Omar Sharif film. I go, "Oh no, that's not it." And then I'd send these emails and phone calls, and they'd say, "Yeah, we've got it." And I go, "Okay, it's the Omar Sharif film." But then no, Columbia, Sony came back and said, "We've got this 1-inch tape. We can send you a digitize. We don't have the rights anymore. We can digitize it and send you a file." I was like, "All right then." And then I got this link and I downloaded it. Here we go, Omar Sharif. And it wasn't. It was The Appointment, and so that was mastered, and it took a long time. There was a lot of skill and care. It's a whole presentation on its own. And my colleague Peter did most of the amazing work on it, remastering that, because it didn't exist in any other form. The only way you can see that film today is from that master, which was from the old NTSC 1-inch movie of the week broadcast master. So it's a miracle that film even exists. Get Carter, original neg, fine, done. But there is one tiny sequence in that where Michael Caine, I don't know if anyone knows this, but Michael Caine can't drive. So there's a scene in the film where he's driving a car. It's like in The Italian Job, he never drives a Mini. It's a great fact. It's not a great fact. In Get Carter, there's a bit where he's driving the car. Now, if you go and watch Get Carter and you remember this, you'll spot this. It lasts about 1 second, and he's driving like this. And there's nothing behind. There's just darkness outside, and the car's clearly not moving. Now, when we were working with Warner Brothers on the original, we used the original negative in this, and this is a classic, great film, great project to work on. And they got in touch and said, "Oh yeah, we've scanned the original negative, but there's some damage." I said, "Oh, damn it. Where?" It's like thinking it's going to be this huge, like this whole reel's been wiped out or something, or something catastrophic. And they said, "Well, no, there's one tiny shot where there's some quite bad tearing." And I said, "Well, send us it over. We'll see if we can do something with it digitally." And they said, no, we're going to go and we're going to get the ProMaster element, which you're going to get to ProMaster in a second, which is basically the color separation, nuclear bomb master element. It's black and white records of the color, separate films, reels of film that can then be, at some point, if it really has to, this is the last resort, can be recombined back into color. And they keep it in a salt mine in Utah or somewhere like that. He said, "It's all right, we'll send Jeb or someone down in his tractor to go and get it." And they did. They went down and got this one reel for this 1 second shot of Michael Caine driving the car. It took like a week. And they scanned that tiny little section and dropped it in. I mean, it's a second. But they went and got the whole thing out of the salt mine, got it sent over to Hollywood, had it scanned, got it sent to us. Anyway, so now when you watch that film, you'll see that 1 second shot and go, "Oh, you can't drive." Watership Down was a great project to work on. That was very recent. We actually did the mastering several years ago for whatever reason, but it only came out recently. But it's a beautiful thing to watch because it was done with a lot of care to the animation process. I even went to Watership Down. I was going to say where it was filmed. But it's where the animators went because they drew and studied the landscape. And it was amazing seeing it and working on it and seeing the landscape in the film. I really enjoyed working for that. And when there's an extra feature on the Blu-ray, on the UHD, and it's a Super 8 film of the studios. And, it's classic home movie footage of people waving and walking about. And there's a moment where Nigel Humberstone, who's the lead animation director, I think that was his role, he's walking down a street, and I recognise that street. And I'm working from home. So I went out for my lunchtime walk, and it was right round the corner from where I live in West London. The animation building was it was mainly animated in Warren Street of all places, but they also did a load of work out in West London, right round 2 minutes from my flat, which I thought was quite amazing. Anyway, we're going to go into one of these films. Let's see which one is going to be. Distant Voices, Still Lives. Distant Voices, Still Lives was a really great project, really interesting film. How many people have seen Distant Voices, Still Lives? Oh, good. It's a great film, isn't it? Really lovely film. Terence Davies. So we remastered this at Pinewood Studios. Crikey, I don't want to imagine. Within the last 10 years, that's for sure. Terence was alive. He was with us. He was a really nice man. And he was with us in the whole process of the grading. I'm going to show you a workflow in a second. But what's unique about this film technically is it utilised the bleach bypass process. Anyway, we're going to run a clip from the DCP so you can watch a wee bit. It's a beautiful film.
Sing, Eileen. Sing.
Roll out the barrel. We'll have a barrel of fun.
Roll out the barrel. We got the blues on the run. Sing, boom, ta-ra-ra. We'll have a song of good cheer. Now's the time to roll the barrel, 'cause the gang's all here.
It's a beautiful film. I love that, literally crashing through the screen. What's unique about this film is using the bleach bypass, aka silver retention process, which desaturates the colour, enhances the contrast and grain at the same time, and gives it that beautiful look, very, very thick, heavy grain, and the desaturated colour. But that's applied at the printing stage. We were using the original negative. So here we go. Boom, look at that. You can see here, I make one of these after most projects so that I can refer back to them and remember what I did. And when they asked me to do this, I was like, oh, great, there's a reason I did this. Here they are. So you can see up here, see, oh, there you go, Weir 2018, bottom right corner, there you go. It was restored in 4K. It was one of the first 4K remasters that I supervised, I think it was. But you can see on the left-hand side, we've got the 35mm original neg, a 1989 original print, that would be. We've got the interpositive, and then we've got a DL3, that's a code for BFI distribution for the type of print or the condition of the print, distribution print which was used as a reference backup. That was made, I think, if I recall correctly, that was made at a later date, and the colour was slightly different. So it was always good to have the interpause, and obviously the 1989 print, because those would have had, well, the 1989 print would have had the bleach bypass applied to it. So we scanned the original negative, and you can see the ultrasonic physical repair, 4K scanning. Then there's all the detail of what happened. And then there's all the deliverables that we took for Blu-ray, DVD, QuickTime ProRes, Master 4K, DCP, DPX files for preservation, and a WAV audio master. The audio, where are we? Here it is. The audio was remastered up at the National Film Archive by Mike Kohler, who's very, very good at these things. But we had down here, because it's also a BFI production, we had all the master materials. So you see we had the 4-track mag, and we also had an optical track neg. So we had all the bits and pieces for this film to create the ultimate digital version, shall we say. Not the definitive version, because in the film world, in my belief, nothing is definitive. Here we go. Right, where to next? This is all pre-done, because it's not random at all. I wonder where it will go next. Oh, it's going to Psychomania. Has anyone seen Psychomania? Oh, brilliant. This is a great film. You should, if you haven't seen it, you should go see it. It's a zombie motorcycle gang film from the 1970s. It's a BFI Flipside. If you're not aware of the Flipside strand, you should be. What was unique about this film is it's basically a little genre B-movie from the 70s, British. And I've got another workflow for this, and there's a lot of explanation on the workflow, but basically nothing existed. It's one of these films that we acquired the rights to, and the print that existed was complete. Was it a print? Hold on a sec. If I try and remember, because it was in 2016. We had a CRI and a 16mm print, and they were completely obliterated. There were pieces missing. They were absolutely knackered. They were very, very damaged and compromised. But then, of all places, the Cinematheque in Madrid, the Spanish Cinematheque, had what's called a colour separation protection master. Yeah. So that's what I was talking about with Michael Caine driving his car. It's 3 black and white versions of the film, but each black and white records a different colour record. It's very similar to Technicolor process back in the day. So I'll show you a clip from that. So this clip is actually one of the extra features on the DVD and the Blu-ray, which explains exactly what I just said, but in a much better way, and it's very funky. Oh, can we run that DCP, please? Thanks. That's a really great film. So I think it was quite a miracle that that sort of element existed for that kind of film, because usually you find elements like that for, well, like Get Carter and Lawrence of Arabia, not a zombie motorcycle gang from the 70s film. But what's interesting about this film is before we did that work, the 16mm print was incomplete. You can't project a CRI. The film, you couldn't see it. There was no film materials that you could project. So by digitizing it, and this is kind of the moral of the whole presentation, is by digitizing it, we allow the film to be alive. Or not allow it to be alive, the film is then alive again. We bring it back together again. And I'm not going to call that restoration, it's remastering. But anyway, this is the workflow. Isn't it great? It's very similar to the last one, but if you read it, it's very different. We've got the separation elements, and it was combined. It was scanned on a Northlight scanner. It's a good scanner, that. There was a lot of deflicker on one of the elements, so you have to go in and restore each element. So you have to do 3 times the amount of work, because it's three film elements essentially that you're recombining. If you recombine them without cleaning them or doing any more work, you have this compound of problems. So yeah, for a zombie motorcycle gang film. But it was worth it, because it's a great film. Oh, here we go. The next film, I'm not going to pretend I don't know which one it's going to be. The next film is a similar situation where if we hadn't done the remastering work, there wasn't really a way you could see the film. You could see it on YouTube if you wanted to, but it looked awful. You could find a VHS, but it was cut, it was short. But, here we go. Dance Craze. Who's seen Dance Craze? Oh, brilliant. Not as many people as I thought. This is really a really good film, this. I love Dance Craze. This was a great project. It was a great project because I love ska music, but it was also a great project. Technically, it was a great project. It was very satisfying. This came about just having a cup of tea with someone, and they said, "Oh, have you heard of this film?" And I went, "No." And they said, "Oh, well, you should see it." And I watched it on YouTube, and I thought, "Hang on, this is quite good. This could be interesting for the BFI to do." And then I sent it to relevant people, and they went, "This could be interesting. This could be good for us to do." But it turned out there's no film elements, or there's no elements that we can use. There was a 35mm print that was very, very compromised. But the more I dug into it, the more I learnt about Joe Dunton. Does anyone here know Joe Dunton? Ben, you worked on it. There you go. He knows him. Brilliant. So Joe is a great guy, a real character. I forget his credit on this film. It's something like creative designer or creative director. He designed the look of Dance Craze, and it's a very pioneering film. You'll see a clip in a second, and you'll watch it, and you'll think, "Well, I've seen this before," but this is the first time a film was shot like this. He decided to shoot a concert film, and instead of having the cameras, like these cameras here in the audience pointing at me, he said, "Let's get Steadicams, and let's put them on the stage and have them going around these mad musicians," and they were mad. And he said, "Let's shoot on Super 35. Super 35, so normally when you're shooting 35mm, I don't know if you remember back to Psychomania there's a black area left blank to the left of the frame. That's usually where the soundtrack goes. But Super 35 takes up the whole area, so you get an increase in resolution. Remember what I said? Bigger size, bigger resolution, sharper image. So he said, if I do that, I can blow it up to 70mm. I said, "Well, that sounds great, Joe, but where are the materials?" He says, "I've got a 70mm print in his loft." So in his attic, he had the last remaining 70mm print of Dance Craze. One of the great things about 70mm, and I think it's the best thing about 70mm, is the audio. Because I had magnetic tracks on the film rather than optical tracks, so you get that beautiful, warm, analog quality, but also allows for 6-track stereo. So you get the sides filled in with the noise of the audience and the musicians and all sorts of things. So you get this immersive experience. Yeah, why don't we watch a clip? Watch a clip.
Right, who here gets up at 7 o'clock in the morning? Do you work in factories? Yeah, right. Are Are you ever 3 minutes late? Right, you'll like this one then. 3 Minute Hero!
It's 5 p.m. and you're on your way home. Just another
Two things about that. That clip is exactly 3 minutes long. And I used to think there was some real great depth and moral to the lyrics of that song, but it's just about a guy who's always 3 minutes late for work. It's like, oh, what's it about? The great challenge to that was the print that Joe had, the 70mm print, as with a lot of 70mm prints, was very faded. So when we came to doing the grading, thankfully we still had Joe. Joe's still here. He's still around. But we had Joe with us. In fact, it was in here to view it and assess it and review it. And we had Jerry Dammers from the specials as well, who, was obviously heavily involved in it. He's in it. And it's about two-tone, his label. But the flashing coloured lights and a faded film, it was a nightmare, but a very enjoyable nightmare to try and get the colours right and work out, what colour was correct, what colour was, what was white, what was red, it was very good. And here is the workflow. So the 35mm distribution print we had was very, very poor condition, but it's always good to have whatever you can get, anything, even if it's a VHS, anything, or a Super 8. We had the Super 8 on Watership down. We didn't use it for a reference on the grading work, but it was great to have it because it had the original colour as well. The audio on that, Dolby phoned us up and said, hey, we heard you working with two-tone. We'll do you an Atmos mix. All right, okay, for free. He's like, brilliant. So we spent a few days in the Atmos Theatre in Soho Square listening to that over and over and over again, just trying to get it just a bit right. No, I think we need to work on it for longer. All right, then. But yeah, the sound is fantastic. For a while, we were trying to figure out ways of getting the audio off of the magnetic tracks of the print. But then Two-Tone went through their records, through their paperwork, and did a paper trail search and actually found the original elements for the full mix for the film. So we could recreate the 6-track stereo mix. There was also the original mono mix, the original two channel stereo, and then we did an Atmos mix, and none of it was inauthentic. That was the beauty of it. It was, you could call it an authentic Atmos mix because it was using actual audio recorded at the time for surround. Anyway, that's the end of that. On to this. To restore, to remaster. This keeps me awake at night. It doesn't really. What is it we're doing to these films for distribution? I'm not sure I'd call it restoration. Anyway, this is a very low resolution image of the man with the golden helmet. I really like this painting because if you stand at the back, it looks a lot better than it does from here. It kind of encapsulates a lot of what I think about all the time, especially when we're working with a film with its original negative and we don't have any references, and it's down to me to say, what is this? You know, the Dan who was doing the colour grading will look at me and go, so what do you want? How do you want this film to look? And if it's a film, as I said, that has no reference, or if it's heavily faded and I have nobody with me who was working on the film, I have to come up with this decision. I have to make the decision of how it should look. And I find looking at paintings, and this is very pompous, but I find looking at paintings really, really interesting because the conservation work and the restoration work of art is fascinating. And I think it informs, well, it doesn't inform a lot of what we do, but it relates to a lot of what happens at, say, the National Film Archive and other archives around the world, where they are restoring and repairing and compensating for the loss and damage of physical objects. Because at the end of the day, that's restoration. When Kelly's winding through the film and it's damaged or there's sections missing, it needs to be repaired. There's a very specific and a very, very highly skilled process that she goes through to repair that. It's not just a bit of splicing tape. And I think that, so to me, that is restoration. You're restoring the physical object. So when this painting here gets restored, which I'm sure it has been many times, as films are many times, because nothing lasts forever, we go and see it, we view it in the gallery, and we love it. And then we go, oh, I'd like a copy of that. So you go to the shop and you buy a print, which is essentially like coming to the cinema here. You might have been there 2 years ago and watching Jaws and going, oh, I really like this film. And you go to the shop and you'll buy a print. You'll buy a copy. It goes back to what I was saying about duplication, preservation, duplication. So that's the same painting, but it looks different. The reason it looks different is because I don't know. For some reason, it ended up looking different. But if you go on the internet like I did and search for that painting, you'll see 100 different looks to the same painting because it's been photographed, scanned, interpreted, which is a very big word, in different ways. But what's the correct way? These aren't the correct way. The only correct way to see this painting is in the gallery. It's in the cinema to see a print. So it's our duty to distribute films as best we can digitally or photochemically. It's becoming a very expensive process, but digitally. So if we're going to interpret that film digitally, we have to make sure we get it right. So that's kind of the aim I was getting at with showing these paintings, is you can see a film in the same print in many different cinemas and it will look completely different each time because it'll be on different equipment, different projectionist, different screen, different seat. You might be in a different mood. Something's different every single time. So when I sit in that grading suite and someone says, all right, boss, what's it supposed to look like? Oh, God. There's a lot of weight. So it's something that I don't think a lot of people realise, the amount of work and research that goes into how something should look on screen, because it's not always just a simple case of pulling it off the shelf, scanning it, projecting it. Everything changes every time you put it through a process. It changes slightly. You have to bring it back. What are you bringing it back to? Well, here's my reference. Okay, sometimes it might be like, a set of red shoes from the red shoes. That's what the red should be. Okay, let's make it look like that, but then it doesn't look right. So you can see why I stay awake at night. Anyway, this is just a really nice paint. Oh, the other thing about that painting with the man with the golden helmet, it's Rembrandt, but then they found out that he actually didn't even paint it, which I find really interesting. So who is the author? You have to protect the author's intention. So if a man makes a film about a zombie motorcyclist in the 70s, and you are remastering it, you have to protect his original intention and the filmmaker's original intention. You can't bring your own taste into the process. I just put this here because I really like it. That's it. It's got beautiful light. And as I said, if anybody wants to learn and get into the business of remastering or even restoring films, get into art galleries. It's really important how other people have interpreted light over the years, because that's essentially what you're doing with someone else's work. This is my last slide, and then we'll have questions, I promise. DCP, Digital Cinema Package. This is the current norm and the foreseeable future of cinema. 95% of films that you see in the cinema, unless you come here exclusively, are projected from a DCP at 2K or 4K. And that's what we distribute most of our films on. The BFI distribution library is still probably got the largest amount of film prints in it for distribution. So you can book out film prints from the BFI to show in your cinema if you have one, or your film club. But a lot of the time now it's digital. So this is kind of me saying we should embrace digital, because I know a lot of people are anti-digital. I embrace digital because it keeps films alive, you know. We can send a film to the 550 whatever theatres at the click of a button now, instead of knackering film prints and sending them all over the place, and then they fall apart, and then you're in the situation with the appointment. There's only a tape from an American broadcast archive. That's quite highly likely why that film went missing, because it was sent somewhere and just never came back. Big Banana Feet, see that guy's bought a copy, good work. Big Banana Feet, I found a copy of that on eBay, and we've since found the negative to that. But the only reason the negative was located is because we re-released it and somebody recognised it in the can and went, oh, that's that film I saw on the news. Otherwise, it would still remain missing. So it's really important that we keep distributing films, even if it's on digital. And there, end of the lesson. Thanks very much. I'm not giving any examples, but yes, you do, and you have to be very diplomatic and very kindly persuasive, and I don't think I've ever been in a situation where they haven't backed down. Or usually you say, we'll do it your way and we'll do it our way, and then eventually they see your way and go, oh, it looks great, and then it's never really a problem, but it does happen. I think the most amazing thing is when people say this is not how I remember, because it goes back to what I was saying, is nobody remembers anything correctly. And that's why it's down to us to get it right. And I'm not saying I get it right all the time. I don't get it right all the time. But I make it my ambition to do as much research as possible so I get a bloody good shot at it. Because when someone says, well, this isn't how I remember it, I'll say, well, this is from an original print. This is as good as it's going to get. But you always, you should never dismiss how someone remembers something. Because I remember when I was a kid, and I have a nostalgia for films. Do you remember on TV when something was CinemaScope? This is like, way back in the day. It would be full, 725, 76, whatever. And the one I remember is Ghostbusters 2. And at the end of the film, it's a good film, there's this really cheesy bit where there's a painting of all the Ghostbusters. And all of a sudden, it pulls out and these black bars appear. Or when you watch a James Bond film, James Bond would do something amazing. And then suddenly it would pull out and these bars would appear and you go, oh, the credits are coming. And I thought that was part of the filmmaking process. I thought that's what happened in films. But then you go and see films in the cinema, or then suddenly you buy a DVD when DVDs first came out, or when they started doing, I remember getting the Italian job on VHS, and it was widescreen edition, going, oh, what's all this about? I was like, oh my God, it's a different film. There's stuff that I never saw. It looks amazing. So how you remember something can be very deceiving. And I think a lot of people have to make peace with that and just go, how you remember something, it's not what it's like now. It's like that Lemmy sketch where he gets the photograph and says, I want to go back there. Sorry, mate, you can't. That's it. No, well, people are laughing. It's a very good question. If the film is in a very, very poor state and say very acetic, meaning that it's giving off a very heavy vinegary gas, and if it's really faded, if you have an alternate copy to the film, you have to consider destroying it. Otherwise, it will affect the other films around it. So there are cases for destroying elements. It's horrible. I hate even saying that. It hurts me. But there are cases, but it's very, very, very heavily considered. And I don't think you would ever, ever destroy a unique element, especially if it's a film shot on film. I mean, something actually not related to what you're saying, but I should mention is we're getting into a really interesting period because we've got films that were shot post-2000 that have got a thing called a digital intermediate, where it was shot on, Kodak Neg. Then it was scanned to digital. They finished the whole film on an Avid or an Adobe or a Final Cut digitally, and then they put it back out to film, and they make a print. And usually that's done at, back in the day, for years it was done at 2K resolution. So now we've got people saying, we want to release this in 4K, and you go, well, we have to do the whole post-production process again, because it was never, there isn't a negative that was done at that came from data, because it was done in a digital environment. There was the data that produced that film element was only 2K resolution. So that's not answering your question. I'm just spitting that out there because it's something I'm trying to get my head around at the minute. It's a real conundrum. It's like, what do we do with this? This is a new thing. Like, these are films that technically, if you scan the negative, it's not really going to be 4K because it's from a 2K source. Sorry, that didn't answer your question. That was just me going bleh. But to destroying film elements, it's something that's really, really heavily considered. And I know that there's multiple bits of paperwork that have to be signed, and people have to be sought. And, they have to write an email to the president or something. But but it's something that's really heavily considered. If it's unique, it's a real problem. Yeah. That's a very good question. That's not a planted question. No, we're not going to do that. But the negative will be scanned at a very high resolution, and it will be deposited in the National Film Archive so that there's a digital version of the negative, not a remaster, just a raw digital version of the negative as a DPX sequence and the negative itself. But to re-release it again would mean this guy has to buy it again. So I hope you kept it. We're not going to do that because we're satisfied with the release as it is. We're really pleased with it. I'm very proud of it. I know Murray, the director, is very proud of it. So maybe in 20 years or 10 years or whatever, it's good to know that it exists. So
Yeah, thank you.
I don't care. No, honestly, I don't. I'm not. I mean, it's a strange. I don't care because I know that the original negative is sitting in a vault. I know there'll be another version down the line. I know it'll be fine. I know there'll be a Blu-ray that's been out from France that looks better if I really want to see it. I'm not a collector. I don't collect Blu-rays and DVDs. People are always surprised by that. I'm not. I'm more into the nerdy stuff that we've just been talking about. That's my game. When I get home, I sit and I watch The Hairy Bikers and Rick Stein. I'm not even kidding. I rarely watch films at home. But when it comes to finding out about the use of, I mean, AI is a real, I was expecting AI to come up. Someone always asks the AI question. And I think there'll be a time in the very, very near future. I mean, nobody even knows what AI is, to be honest. Nobody even knows what it does. I'm finding AI personally very useful at the minute for unlocking knowledge because I've got dyslexia and I use Notebook LM, and it's so useful for me to understand things like legal contracts and bits and pieces like that, and I find that amazing. But AI is not really what we should be using yet for something like that. And I think what they've done there is just a misuse of something they don't understand, and it doesn't bother me. I don't really care because, there's worse going on in the world. So I hope that answered your question. I don't get angry, I'm not an angry guy. Yeah, no, exactly. It actually becomes more difficult. This is something that my team and I have to deal with on a daily basis, moving stuff about. That's it, you know. And then, you know, it becomes file formats, and, you know, then it become hard drives. I hate hard drives. You know, I also hate servers because it means nothing. It's nothing to me. It's like it could go wrong just like that, and it's all gone. At least up at the archive, they've got film prints on the shelf, you know. But the having multiple copies of things, it just becomes a massive data management thing. And with data management comes costs. You know, there's companies that will charge you through the whatever for storage. It becomes a storage issue, and video files, digital files, they duplicate like bunnies. You know, it's like you have a copy of a film you're bringing out, then all of a sudden there's 4 copies of it with different things, and you've got subtitle files. And I think that's one of the great things actually about digital distribution is for versioning. Versioning being when you send it to other territories, you can have the same DCP and send it to every single territory, and then just send an additional bit of data called a version file that will apply the audio or the subtitles for that specific territory. You don't have to build a whole new print up again. But to answer your question, I'm very good at not answering questions. It's just a completely different set of problems. And it's problems that I don't like because it's something you can't grasp physically. I'm not being old school and saying, I prefer having a set of cans just to pat on there. But it can go so easily wrong with digital, with a video file. We've had it happen here. We've had whole things go missing. And then thankfully we can phone up a distributor and say, can you send it again because it didn't download properly? And they send it again and it's fine. But it's just a different set of problems. I mean, there's a great story about a Pixar film, and this is common knowledge. You might have heard it before, and someone deleted it. Someone deleted the whole bloody film from the Pixar servers, and it just so happened there was a woman who was working from home because she was pregnant, and she'd been working on one of the scenes, and she'd taken a whole backup of the file on a hard drive. And that's how, it was like a Toy Story or something. It was a Pixar film. And that's how they retrieved it, because she took a copy on her hard drive. So that sort of thing's, it's not even worth thinking about. But that's where we are digitally. If it was film and they damaged the reel, then you could probably save it. You could probably reprint it. There's a film that I'm working on at the minute. I'm not going to tell you what it is. But there's a shot where it's 2 characters talking to each other. And one of the characters is on a different film stock, or it's been cut in, it's denser. So you have to find a way of making them match. It's very difficult. But if it was digital and someone deleted that shot, that take, you'd have nothing. You'd have to shoot it again. So yeah, it's a different host of problems. And if you drop a hard drive, you're finished. If you drop a roll of film, it's usually all right. Yes, and to answer your question, no. Yes, it's a really good question, but I know we're not in the game to do that. And if we had to do it, we'd always present the original mono track, because that's as I've been talking about for the last 4 hours, you're preserving as well as you can on whatever platform it is you're viewing it, that original film. So if it is shot in mono, or recorded in mono, you present it in mono. If it's black and white, you present it in black and white. I'm glad there were no colorization questions. But colour retrieval is I'm against it, but it is an interesting topic for another time. It's a tool that can be possibly used in other areas. But the Psycho thing's interesting. I've got that on Blu-ray. Just listen to mono. Why do you need that in surround sound? I mean, it's great, in mono. Sorry, it's not me having to go at you, but why do you need that? But I think that's the end. Thank you very much.